Hello friends and Sohorts, I'm Shannon Makes, fabric manipulator by day, circus artist by night, and today we're celebrating Halloween and all things spooky with a pattern I've been wanting to do for a long time. It's the Sophie Dress by Lynn, and I thought it would just be the perfect project for this season. You know, vaguely Victorian, spooky in tone without being an outright costume, and in some classic autumn colors with, you know, maybe some fun spooky black accents. The pattern is once again a PDF pattern and I've already got it printed off, so let's hop right in. Before I can cut out my pattern though, I realize I actually should look at the size chart and figure out which size pattern I need to be cutting out. And the fun thing about this pattern is that when you purchase it, you get access to every size that the pattern is offered in, but you don't have to print them all out. It is split into 3 different PDFs. Each PDF has no more than 4 sizes on it, which is kind of fun because it means that you don't have to do that thing where you're trying to figure out which size is your size from like 10 other different lines. And as you can see, this pattern is pretty size inclusive, so that's a lot of lines to try to decipher. Looking at the size chart here to figure out which specific one I should cut out, and the instructions say I should choose a size based on my chest measurement. Now my chest measurement happens to fall perfectly between 2 sizes. I'm either a B or a C, but I do have pretty large shoulders, so I'm gonna play it safe and round up to a C, figuring that I would rather have a little bit more range of motion, and that worst come to worst, I could always trim it down, but it's gonna be a little bit harder to add fabric in once it's already cut. So I am gonna go cut up size C. Okay, let's take a quick look at what we've got going on here. So we have over here the sleeve, then the back of the dress and the front of the dress, as well as the back yoke and the front yoke. We've got the cuff for the sleeve. We have a cute little collar, a very sizable pocket, and then a variety of different size rectangles, which are essentially different plackets. We've got a button loop, the template for cutting out the ruffles, and the template for the waist tie. So one kind of fun thing about having these self-drafted templates is that you can, like me, choose to put them on actual physical paper, or you can just decide to cut them out directly on your fabric. Now for me, I have decided to make physical paper pattern pieces. One, because I think this pattern is stinking cute and I'll probably make more than one of it, so this will save me some time. But also because if you have been around the channel before, you will know that I am often running quite tight on fabric and yardage, and I like to have all of my pattern pieces already cut out so that way I can arrange them in the most efficient manner possible and try to ensure that I just don't run out of fabric at the end of the project. So speaking of fabric, let's go take a look at the fabric I'm going to be using for this project. It's this absolutely stunning linen rayon blend in an orangey burnt sienna color, and it has just a touch of stretch to it, which I absolutely love. It's a gorgeous color, a fabulous texture, and I cannot wait to start working with it. And if you're in love with it as much as I am and you want some of your own, you can actually find it in some of my holiday fabric bundles, which are now available on my coffee shop. These are themed fabric bundles curated by yours truly, and they all contain a selection of a few different high quality but affordable fabrics, plus, you know, maybe a couple little bonuses thrown in. More information is available on my Ko-fi page, which I'll link in all the usual places, but for now, let's get back to the fabric at hand. Then I did the dance that so many of us are familiar with, the pattern piece shuffle, trying to lay everything out as efficiently as possible because while this is a gorgeous, voluminous dress, it does require a lot of yardage, and as you know, a lot of yardage is pretty rare around here. Well, all of my pattern pieces are cut out and ready to go, and I was almost able to squeeze everything onto that main chunk of yardage, that beautiful rust-colored linen. But I did discover towards the very end of the cutting process that I was going to be a tiny bit short and I was going to need to make some alternative decisions. And while I do actually technically have more of this cinnamon linen, it is supposed to be reserved for my holiday fabric bundles. So I decided instead to go digging in my stash and see if I had any complementary fabrics. And I did indeed come up with this lovely vintage print, which I found at my thrift store a couple weeks ago. And it would be absolutely perfect, very complementary colors. So used that to cut out the lining layers for my front yoke and my back yoke, as well as 2 of the 4 pocket bags. And on the pocket bags, I was at least able to add this little strip here of the main fabric. Now this is where your hand goes in and out of the dress. So this is going to be the section that's the most visible from the outside of the garment. And I'm hoping that that's going to make it a little less obvious that the pocket bags are a different fabric. Then the last thing I did yesterday was I added the interfacing into 2 out of the 4 cuffs. So these are now all ready to go. And according to the instructions, the next steps are going to be to stay stitch the arms eyes on the bodice so that those don't stretch out. And then also to go ahead and finish off all the raw edges on the front piece, the back piece, and the pocket bags. So my stay stitches are all in, and while I was there and at this machine, I decided to go ahead and jump ahead a few steps and throw in a couple lines of gathering stitches. Now these go along the top edge of the front and the back, as well as over the sleeve cuff in the sleeve. And I just decided to do that because it was more convenient while I still had this machine out, because the next step involves me getting out my serger to take care of the raw edges on a few pieces. Now the instructions are quite clear. You don't have to have a serger. You can use some pinking shears. You can also overcast them. If you have a normal sewing machine that can overcast, you could use a zigzag stitch. Me, I have a serger and my pinking shears are incredibly dull, so that is what I'm going to be doing, but whatever works for you. Also, my gathering stitches look like hot garbage because I did not use the correct tension setting on my machine. But I'm not going to waste that thread. I'm not going to pull them out and redo them. They're just gathering stitches. They're supposed to come out at the end of the project anyway, so they're just going to look a little wonky, and that's okay. Now that my raw edges are all taken care of and no longer likely to fray away, the next step is going to be sewing in these lovely giant pockets. And the way that we're going to do that is going to be super simple. We're simply going to line the top of the pocket piece up with the mark that we made from our main pattern piece, both on the front and the back of the dress, put the 2 pieces together and sew them down. The instructions tell you to do so with a slightly smaller seam allowance than the one you use to cut the pattern out with. Now, I used an incredibly arbitrary seam allowance, the width of my ruler, so to make sure that I keep the correct and same seam allowance throughout the whole project, I'm using my tried and true method of taping a piece of cardboard down to the base of my machine. Now, every time that I use this in a video, somebody in the comments sees it and absolutely loves it. So I will say it is incredibly cheap, it is very effective, and it uses tools that you for sure have laying around your house already. However, if you love the idea, if you're somebody that struggles with sewing straight seams and you think you will get a lot of use out of a seam guide, it might be worth investing in a metallic one. They have magnets in them and you can just slide them along the metal on the base of your sewing machine to reposition it, which makes it a little bit easier to use and a little bit more durable. But, you know, if you don't want to spend the money, or if, like me, you're sure you have a magnetic one somewhere in your sewing studio, but you just can't seem to find it, the cardboard and the tape works perfectly well. Alright, so now that that is done, if we consult our instructions, the next step would be sewing the gathering stitches, but as you know, I've already done that. So the step 7 and 8 is to prep the cuffs and the collar, and I think I'm going to do that off camera tonight because it is fairly simple and you've probably seen me do it a zillion times. Also, I am rapidly losing the light. I think it's going to rain out any moment here. So the next time you see me should be sometime tomorrow. I should have the cuffs and the collar ready to go, and then the next step we will be attaching the yoke to the body. Good morning, everyone. It is a lovely, crisp fall morning out there, and I have some lovely, crisp, fall-colored pattern pieces ready to go. So these are my 2 cuffs. Wow. And then over here, my 2 little collar pieces. They all went together very clean, very easy. Instructions and illustrations were great, although I will say that sewing this tiny little button loop was a bit of an exercise in some sadistic sewing. But now that that is all ready to go, the next step in the instructions is gathering the main body pieces down into the front and back yoke using those kind of wonky gathering stitches that I showed you earlier. However, I am going to skip ahead in the instructions just a tiny bit and do the very first part of step 12 right now, which is marking out that front placket slit, just because I figured it would be easier and cleaner to mark it out now while it was sitting perfectly flat, and then I'll go ahead and start gathering everything down. Wow. Once the front was done, I repeated the same process in the back, pinning down some key landmarks, then using the thread to gather the fabric in between those points as evenly as possible without going overboard. This was also another fun opportunity to use my pinnable work table, which I swear I'm always finding new and interesting ways to use this feature. Well, that took way longer than necessary. Purely my own fault. As it turns out, those wonky gathering stitches were a little bit too wonky and they were getting caught and not wanting to gather properly, and it was actually gonna be way faster to just rip them out and throw a line of gathering stitches in by hand on a couple of the worst ones instead of trying to continue to do battle with them. But now it's all done, and look how stinking cute these gathers are. Loving the look. I do need to go and press this line here on the front and back, and then we can move on to the next step, which is sewing the shoulder seams. And just by looking at the diagrams here, it does look like we're going to be dealing with the burrito method, which I am by no means an expert on. I've only done it once before, I think on my corset hoodie. So I'm just going to go step by step, follow these cute little images here, and see where it gets us. So having just walked through that whole process myself, and only being the second time I've ever used this technique, I will say that looking at the instructions and trying to understand the entire process all at once is a little bit confusing and intimidating. So what I found worked really well for me was just to take it step by step. Get the physical material and go read step A, do step A. Then read step B and figure out how do I do step B. And in the end, if you do it like that, there really is only one way that you can get the yokes right sides together on the front and on the back. And as long as you just make sure that you've got your right sides together, your wrong sides facing out, you're golden. So I'm gonna go ahead, I've got it all pinned up. You can see here's my burrito. I'm gonna go get this all sewn up and turned right side out, and then the next step is gonna work on that cute keyhole back feature. So the keyhole is in and bound, and now the next step is going to be tackling that front placket slit that we marked earlier. When the placket was finished, I moved on to installing the collar. So I thought I would press on and sew up the main side seams of this dress and just try and get a little bit ahead on this project, just do it off camera, but that'll teach me to keep working when I'm tired, because I definitely sewed a meticulously aligned, very precise seam down the main sides of the dress and all around the pocket bags, and it was gorgeous, and the fabrics were the wrong side together. So then I just need to call it quits for today. So I'll see you all tomorrow. So I spent this morning picking my stitches and fixing my mistakes, and now the pockets are sewn on facing the right direction, and all I have to do is sew up the body the right way, which, fingers crossed, should be as simple as pinning, stitching, and pressing. Excellent. Moving right along, the next item would be to create the sleeve pocket, but in Aura's sew along for this video, they said that the placket is not actually necessary because the cuff is so long, so I'm just gonna skip it, which means that the next step for us is going to be running some gathering stitches on the end of the sleeve and then sewing it into a tube, which I think I'm going to do with some French seams. Quick update for you. The decision not to do the placket backfired slightly on me because I forgot to leave a gap in my sleeve. I closed it all the way up with that French seam, which I shouldn't have. I should have left at least a little bit at the end open. But instead of going back and undoing the French seam, I made the questionable decision to simply slice into the fabric here, and you can see it doesn't look great, but the reason that I'm not too worried about that is because I'm actually going to sew permanently a button right here so that this section here, it never is going to open. There's never going to be any stress on this joint. Plus, obviously, like, there's still plenty of room for me to get my hand in with this closed. So then I'll just go in, cover over the frayed threads with some embroidery floss. Long story short, either do the placket or leave the very end of your sleeve open and this won't be a problem. So now I'm just going to finish off the inside here by hand and then start in on sleeve number 2. because I only have enough pins to pin the gathers on one sleeve at a time. Well, I've got a bodice and I've got 2 finished sleeves, and you know what that means? It's time to combine the 2. Now, I know many of us struggle with sleeves, but I don't actually find them that bad, and I think it's due to a few tried and true techniques. First of all, I always use 2 lines of gathering stitches, one on either side of the seam allowance, because I really find that that helps a ton to wrangle those gathers into place and make them behave. Also, I take my time lining up all of the notches and seams and gathering everything down to ease the sleeve into the arm's eye. Then I use a ton of pins to hold everything down while I stitch it in place. Now you could finish the inside edge of this sleeve here off with a French seam. I've definitely done it before and it does give a really nice clean finish, but I've always had a hard time keeping a nice shoulder poof when I do it that way. So instead, for this dress, I'm gonna go with a serger. Now, I was lucky enough to fit this entire ruffle along the selvage, which means I don't have to finish off this edge. I've already joined my ruffle into one long circle, making sure it doesn't have any twists in it because nobody wants a Mobius ruffle. Just imagine all that hemming. And I've also finished off the bottom edge as well. So now I can just run some gathering stitches and gather it up and sew it on. And because this edge is stable and the bottom edge of the dress is now serged and also stable, I won't have to do any further finishing. Now, if you've been thinking about trying French seams out for the first time, but they intimidate you a bit, or maybe you're not sure you fully understand them, I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. This ruffle right here, it's the perfect place to try one out. It's a short, straight seam, plus the overall length of the ruffle is not mission critical. There is plenty of wiggle room in here, which means that if you mess up and it doesn't go well, worst case scenario, you just trim it off and choose another method of joining the pieces together. Plus, best case scenario, you've tried a new technique and maybe added a new seam finish to your sewing arsenal. So if you have been on the fence about figuring out the French seams, I challenge you to try just one of them here on this ruffle. So friends, how did it turn out? Well, you'll get to see for yourself in a second here, but for my part, I'm super pleased with how it turned out. The pattern went together really well, the instructions were very thorough and had lots of cute and helpful illustrations, and the resulting dress is super stinking cute. Plus, and if you yourself live in a cold climate, you could probably relate, but it's really easy to wear other layers under this dress and still look cute, which is absolutely key for Halloween in my part of the world. There were definitely some hiccups along the way because this is a creative process after all. That's kind of part of the whole deal, but I'm very pleased with my solutions and the workarounds are basically invisible. Now, the entire reveal is shot wearing my spiderweb Waspie from last week's video because that's just part of the fit, but the dress is equally cute with the included waist tie, and that does make it very easily size adjustable, so if you're somebody whose waistline fluctuates regularly, this could be a key feature. If you want more Shannon Makes, I do have a Patreon where you can support the channel and where you can get extras like early and ad-free access to videos, monthly vlogs, and more. Plus, if you're interested in a holiday fabric bundle, those are over on my Ko-fi store, which is linked in the description below. But for now, enough talking, let's roll the beauty shots. If you'd like to see how I made this super cute Halloween underbust corset, that link is right here, and if you want to check out my holiday fabric bundles, that link is here. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful Halloween, and I'll catch you in my next video. Bye!